All right, we're live a little bit early, and I want you guys to tell me if you can hear my guest.
Banana testing.
Hmm. Why is it called a guest though? Because it's not a house.
Uh, because you're hosting the stream and I don't
But I'm not
own or
hosting
live
it.
in the
Isn't
stream.
YouTube hosting it? I mean, it's their servers.
Well, host in the sense of like host, not host as in like hosting as a service.
Oh.
Like host as in like you are here to host the chat and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a guest to your chat.
That makes sense. So, I stopped VTubing because I got complaints. It's like they don't like the
Do
troll.
tell.
Yeah, they don't like the troll. Also, I guess because I promoted VTubers, I noticed some of my regulars now have abandoned me, and I find them in various chats. It's sad.
Interesting.
It
Why are
is.
they saying you're a degenerate weeb now or something? Like what?
No, no, no. It's like I told them, hey, go watch this VTuber, and they did, and they're not watching me.
Oh, you're not. You've been replaced. You're not
Yes.
entertaining enough. Got it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. I'm lowering your volume a little bit because people are saying that I'm too low.
Too
So
loud.
yeah, let's hope now it's better. Okay. Um, V audios is too low. See, can't hear V. He is too low. Man, YouTube
Well,
should
I
have
did.
like pre-stream thing where you can set these things out.
Well, I mean, what's that other thing that all the other guys use, like RGE? It's like StreamMate, Stream
Mm.
Deck. Is that it?
So like I
Or
have
am
to
I
use
boomering that?
another program to use this program. All right, let me watch the stream in replay so I can see if the voice is fine. I'm too low.
Too loud.
Okay. Um. All right. Is this good or should I just? And another thing is like when you ask the chat, there's a 2 minute delay, and it makes this tinkering so freaking ridiculous. And then you of course have like trolls in the chat, which are like, "Oh no, you're too loud, you're too low, you're too low." So you don't even know if you should trust them.
Well,
Hmm.
under those circumstances, I would say contact someone you do trust and tell them to watch and let you know.
Yeah, that is a good point. Okay, so I lowered you even further. Chat, tell me if the sound is good now. See, now we have to wait 2 minutes.
Okay.
People say
Well, why don't
yes.
you go into Kib's server and pester some of his people or as one of his mods?
I need to be
Actually, why don't
louder.
you go into your server?
I need to be louder, dude. I'm at max. So if you can't hear me, what you need to do is like there is this magical dial on your speakers, and trust me when I say, but you can turn it a little bit up, and then you can hear the sound better. It's what's it designed to do. All right, people say that it sounds good. All right, so Gamergate 2.0. Do you know that it's trending right now?
God. No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I try to avoid the cancer that is Twitter as much as possible because, I don't like having an involuntary twitch of my eye.
All right, let me give you a dose of cancer then. Here you go.
Oh, thank you.
So, legend has it that the Johnny Depp trial was manipulated by people online. See, like they mind control the jury, and by pressuring social media, and these are the same people which did Gamergate 1.0. And according to journalists and fact checkers, the same people have now manipulated the jury and got Amber Heard to lose the trial
Mhm.
by
Okay.
posting TikTok videos.
Oh, it's TikTok now.
It's
Okay,
it's
got it.
it's
We moved
it's
on from YouTube and everything else. Okay, all right.
it
TikTok now.
depends. It depends on the flavor, but it's TikTok, YouTube videos, and let me just share my screen so people can see what we're talking about. There you go. This is trending right now. Apparently, the social media movement around the Depp Heard was for many a continuation of Gamergate. That's why it's important that we continue to explore what happened because this didn't end at the trial. I love the fact that if you're a victim of domestic abuse as a man, even after you go to court, even after you prove your innocence, people will still accuse you. Like the media still goes ham.
Sure.
Is it?
I'm not surprised.
I am a little bit surprised. Like I thought that. Well, actually, I thought that since so many people saw the trial live and so many people saw what happened, I thought that the media would have the audacity to keep gaslighting like this.
Well, I mean, it's not so much the audacity. It's a combination of they're baiting for clicks.
Mm-hmm.
They think that they're on the winning side of everything just because. And when you ask them, hey, can you just tell me why you think your position's right? You just get the bigot, phobes, whatever. At move along, pleb. And the last thing is that they think that the standards of defamation and all the rest of that is so high that nobody's going to do anything about it. But what they've forgotten since Gamergate and now is that all the cabal of big tech that has basically been protecting them is now giving way to alt tech and this parallel economy stuff. So people can raise money, they can build a case with teams of lawyers, and they will eventually just beat the hell out of them in court. And I think the Depp case is a good example of that. She's fucked around and she found out.
Yeah,
you know, and that's what I think is going to happen with a lot of these people, and that's the reason why they're scared.
What I find interesting is that a lot of these people keep blaming, the culture. I guess it's like, oh, but why are you not giving jobs and why are you taking away business opportunities from her? Because it's like this is like a lawsuit doesn't prove anything, and I'm like, yeah, but where were you when Johnny experienced the same shit? Like,
yeah,
initially she used the press against Johnny, and he wasn't allowed to star the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie. He got fired from, I believe it was the Harry Potter spinoff, right? And when were these people saying it's like, oh, it's just an accusation, like, calm down, bro. Who is this Bob? He is the voice of reason.
I'm officially the fuck around and find out guy. So, yep.
Yeah. But what's also interesting is that a lot of people condemn Johnny with no evidence, and none of them apologized. And we're talking like famous actors. We're talking about people in the press. Like, when I think like the fact that he had the recording with Amber accusing, Amber like saying, oh, who's going to believe you, Johnny? No one's going to believe you. I think like that really swayed public opinion. And, when he came out with those tapes, like everyone that accused him initially, they shut up. Like they stopped accusing him, but they also didn't apologize.
Yeah. I mean, her own statements are the most damning things of them all. Everything else was just an icing on the cake situation. I don't know why the hell anybody would listen to that and just be like, oh, well, we're still in listen and believe. So a self-confessed narcissist talking about how they're going to destroy somebody's life doesn't mean anything, especially in a court of law, not a court of public opinion where it is 100% one-sided. So maybe that is the answer there. That's the answer, Fee, is that these people are so demonstrably destroyed by Twitter. They think Twitter and the courts are basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what's also interesting is the standard that they set, right? It's like, as you said, listen and believe. I mean, basically they set the standard that no woman would ever lie, ever. I mean, there's no circumstance where a woman can lie, and women are different than everyone else on planet Earth because like they're always good, always empathetic, always nice. It's probably why they freaked out when the Legend of Shield Hero came out, right? Because it's a anime which has like every negative trope that femininity can have, like toxic femininity, if you will. And like it really went against their ideology. But like when your ideology is like no woman can ever lie, and then you have like this high profile case where it's demonstrable with recordings that she was manipulating and she was doing this in a way to ruin a man's career, I think that's why the journalists are upset, because it's so damaging to the standard that they set. If they would have said like most women don't lie, like that's fine, because you have the out. It's like, yeah, well, she's just one of them that do lie. But they said like no woman ever lies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem is that again, the internet, or the internet's Kool-Aid, I guess, when it comes to this, and this is, I guess you can call it my third wave and my fourth wave feminism.
Mm-hmm.
They really do truly believe what they're selling,
Mm-hmm.
and I honestly I've kind of switched my opinion a little bit on this, V, just because the more I hear these people talk, at first I thought it was grifting, then I thought it was desperation, and then I realized no, these people have said the lie to themselves so often, and in their own little uh, hate bubble, that they believe what they're saying now. There are some people that are so deluded that they're just like, no, this is how it's been for a number of years now. You can't undo that, and it's just like, well, no, it never was that in the first place.
Well,
And now these guys are getting confronted with reality, and the courts are a good example of that.
the funny part is that I guess like the fifth wave feminism, which is now where you need to define what a woman is causing these people that like some of the worst man haters, like hashtag all men are rapists, all men are abusive, like they're causing them to like seek right wing sources to have a platform because
Yeah,
you look at some of the most prominent feminists that were very vocal and they were the echelon, like they started all of this censorship on Twitter and on social media. It's like, if you remember, like it's called Trust and Safety Council. It's because
yep.
they wanted to keep little girls safe from online bullying, and it was like
Internet
the feminists.
HR.
Yeah, it was like the feminists that came up with this, and they created all of this censorship apparatus, which is now used against them. Because the moment they like J.K. Rowling was like, oh well, men can't have uteruses, like bam, And I have seen so many blue checkmark like feminist accounts getting completely destroyed and banned by the Trust and Safety Council, which is funny because I was warning them in 2014. It's like, you're creating the ring of power, and you think you're going to wield it, but now it's the non-binary activists that get to wield the ring of power.
Yeah. Did you think that you guys were the ascended class? No, you're the plebs that are useful idiots for the time being.
Yeah, pretty much. And I noticed like feminism was hurting the upper class because you had prominent Democrats being, Me Too'd, and journalists being Me Too'd, and politicians. So they were probably like, like this ideology where it's like believe all women doesn't really serve us very well. And promoting this like non-binary gender abolition ideology is not hurting the upper class anymore. Like there's no way you're going to see a prominent Hollywood director getting, like in trouble for, I don't know, like what can he even get in trouble for? But like if you have this third wave feminism where it's like, oh, hashtag all men are rapists, then yeah, he can get in trouble. Like some woman can accuse him. It's like, oh well, he did sexual advances to me in an elevator.
Yeah, and there's a number of byproduct of that. Since we're talking about the case and the precedent, which I guess we could also talk about law a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that the third wave waivers led to the fourth waivers. Obviously, the fourth waivers, that what they were trying to do was really chip away at the standards, right? What do I mean? I mean, they were trying to say it doesn't matter. You have to trust and believe. Okay, you got trust and believe now. Great. Now the fifth waivers, as you're putting it, now they're using that against the fourth waivers, which are now TERFs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exclusionary radical feminists.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the men in that movement are able to blame the feminists from the previous movement of discrimination.
Yeah, I mean, I seen
thus
men
creating a.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say that it makes a perfect shield for the executive types and the media mogul types in Hollywood, and the California places, because they are masters of media spin and dealing with some of the legal class from there, the people who are like IP lawyers and all the rest of that. Dude, you want to see the weirdest thing possible? Have the opposing team send you a note, and in the beginning of it sounds like an advertising byline for first their firm, the other clients they represent, and the titles that they've made. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't care about any of this. You're my opposition. What is this to be like a humble brag? Is this to intimidate me? No, this is what they do. They honestly think that you should stop and pay attention to their accolades of the moment. And it's just spin. It's just garbage. It's just regurgitated marketing vomit to try to convince everybody else that they're talking to of A, they're important, your opinion doesn't matter, and you should just shut up and bow down.
Yeah. Like the left uses authority in order to win debates, right? Like that's why they use corporate speak all the time. They say we, our, like they use academic jargon to sound educated. Like they might say certain things like an entire line that for the average person doesn't even seem like something that a normal human can say. And all of this is to show that they're educated and they have everyone else on their side, and you are just atomized and isolated, and you have no chance to even like your opinions are that of a crazy person, pretty much.
Yeah, and if you dare oppose us, look at all the accolades that we have. Look at all the titles that we have. We'll crush you instantly. So you should just go away. Yeah. But what they don't realize is that whenever you're talking to somebody who doesn't chase clout or is not as concerned about clout as like, well, the Gamergaters, on the other end, the opposition end, what does that sound like? That sounds like a whole lot of cope and hoping that you're just going to go away.
I think like the reason Gamergate was so successful is due to the fact that it had Tumblr and 4chan working together. In other words, it was an alliance between left-wing people and right-wing people. And everyone was there for a different reason. I think like leftists were more there because of corruption, because they were noticing that the game journalists are really causing the industry to go in a bad direction. That's anti-consumer. And the right-wingers were worried about ideology being injected into their games. But at the end of the day, it was just consumers putting aside their political differences and going after corporations in very effective ways, like contacting advertisers, going like, hey, look, this guy, wrote in a publication that gamers are dead, gamers are over. Like, do you stand behind this intel, considering that gamers buy your products? And it made them lose. I think like BuzzFeed wrote an article saying that it made them lose around $4 million.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people say, well, Gamergate lost. And it's like, what exactly did you think you would gain? Right? Like, you can't really take down a private company if they still have like people that are interested in doing business with them. But a lot of people that weren't into politics got into politics because a lot of journalists got exposed for the hacks that they were and the tricks that they were doing and the gaslight that they were pulling. And on top of that, like some of these gaming companies never really recovered. I mean, they're still used as shills, like the extended PR arm of corporations, if you will, but they don't have the power that they did before.
True.
And this is why, like 6 years after, they're still afraid of Gamergate.
Well, that not only that, but there's demonstrable proof that they've been damaged, and by damaged in the worst possible way, metrics. And without getting into the technical, those metrics are the things that marketing firms look at. And like Intel, for example, when Intel got targeted because of like IGN, a bunch of these guys were doing this crap, Intel was berated by a combination, I think, of Redditors, 4chaners, and Tumblr people who were basically just saying, why are you supporting this garbage?
Yeah.
Like, we're the ones who are buying your CPUs for games. So if this is what you support, then we're just not going to do that. And Intel panicked.
I remember their sales went down.
Stop.
Yeah, like Intel sales for a while actually went down. Like people were just buying Ryzen at the time, or AMD, whatever it was. But yeah, like it was demonstrable. Like for a while, people were actually united against this, and eventually, the movement did lost steam and people lost interest. But I don't think like it was so effective, considering the fact that 6 years from there, people are still talking about it. Like the journalists, especially, they're still on about it.
Well, they're terrified about it because it was the first time somebody poked them really hard in the eye, and it left a mark.
Yeah.
And to this day, they still remember that because think about what these guys have been taught. Put yourself for a moment, V, in the place of one of these glorified bloggers, right? You've been basically told you are the cream of the crop. You are the best of the best. But at the same time, you're not happy because you're not writing about what you want to write. Because all you could do is write reviews for games that you have no interest in. You don't like games. You're bad at games. So already you're pissed off that you're being forced into doing something you don't want to do because of this pesky thing called money. Then all of a sudden, the people who are reading this start revolting. They start telling you, go away.
Yeah,
what
fuck off, actually. No, you can curse.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. They tell you to fuck off. And then you respond by lashing back out to them. And then you act even more surprised at the fact that now you're screwing around even more and targeting people, individuals. You're trying to make examples out of people by
oh yeah, I remember that, like Polygon. Yeah, like Polygon journalists. I forgot Ben Kuchera. He actually targeted like a random guy on Twitter just because he disagreed with him on a video game, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this guy works at Dix." It's like, "Oh, I'll ask Dix what they think about hiring this person." And that made them look even more like monsters. It's like, dude, you're a journalist. What the fuck are you doing?
The thing is, and this is my hot take on it. Looking back on this, because I'm old now and cranky and crotchety, and yeah, I would say in reflection, I would say the whole thing about doxing got its momentum because of the media, the gaming media of that time, because they showed it was an effective countermeasure to shut people up.
Yes.
And then people saw that, and the fact that it was very effective through places like Twitter, and they're like, "Oh, I can do this too."
Yeah,
and
I
then
agree.
From there, people.
I agree. Yeah, so, like journals, video game journalists, like they're the one. Like a lot of things that trust like social media says are bad, like online bullying, doxing, like all of these things were mastered by the game journalists. Like, for example, online bullying, like online bullying, in my opinion, is not like just having people send you mean tweets. Online bullying is having people contacting your place of work and trying to get you fired. Like, you can't turn the computer off with that. There's nothing you can do, right? And it's interesting because it's not against the terms of service to do as well. Like, on many of these platforms, if you say, oh, this guy had these offensive tweets, and this is where he works at, let's call his boss. Which, by the way, I don't know if it's still that effective nowadays, because I noticed people are doing this less and less. Does it still happen, you think? Like, do you still have, like, the campaign to call someone's employer to get them fired?
They absolutely try, but it only, I think, is as effective as in the times we live in. Post Gamergate, there are the people who are slightly aware of what's going on. They can see patterns. They're going to be like, why is this happening more often? Why is it that there's a restaurant that I go to and it's got all these weird reviews downvoting it? Like brigading is something that most people know about now.
Yeah.
And then there's the second factor, which is economical. And that is that everybody, like all the businesses that are around me, other business owners that I speak with, people know that the recession isn't coming; it's here. And in that and when you're faced with that, you start to realize who gives a shit about the opinion of somebody online. Our bottom line matters more.
That's a good point.
So it comes down to money. It always comes down to money, and that's also one of the reasons why these guys who are in game or dealing with I guess Gamergate 2.0, they're starting to panic because they realize their heads are not just in the noose, but their corporate overlords are getting ready to kick the stool out from underneath them. Because, well, I mean, like, look what happened with Musk. Musk started to hint at buying Twitter. Twitter course corrected slightly, and then talk of the recession came and how Twitter is overvalued and basically a garbage platform as far as investors are concerned.
Yeah.
Suddenly all the layoffs started happening because they're just like, look, we need to show that we are a company through and through. We're profitable. Okay. Well, that's interesting, Twitter, because for the last, 8 years, you were basically a zombie company. You're coasting. Well, all these other companies right now that are basically irrelevant. Everybody knows they're irrelevant. Marketing companies know they're irrelevant. It's just you want to know what the marketing companies need to know. Where else to advertise? Because if they
at this
figure
point,
that out,
you'll be
these
able to
companies
buy.
are dead.
You'll be able to buy Twitter if the stocks keep dropping. Like what was it?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
$10 a stock or something.
Well,
And this was like from
it
30 or 35, like massive drop.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as it gets to $1.98, then I'll start thinking about it. But,
Zenith asks if this is the person that does comics.
no, but I work with people who do comics.
And also, Sargon knew about
make loot games.
Sargon knew about Gamergate 2.0.
Did he?
It's a meme at this point.
Oh, I'm too busy working. I have no idea.
I don't think like another Gamergate is possible because the reason it happened, it was so shocking to people to see game journalists telling the customer to fuck off. Like that was a very new business model at the time, which a lot of people didn't know it can exist. Walt Disney then perfected it. Like notice how every single like minority that comes up in a Walt Disney movie now gets quote unquote harassment, and Disney tells people to stop watching if they're misogynist or whatever. And I noticed like, okay, but like Asian movies don't have that, anime doesn't have that, any other non-Disney movie doesn't have it. Why is it always happening to Walt Disney? Every single goddamn time, like only minorities from Walt Disney movies are getting harassment, and no other film, nothing else. You know, like all these racists are quiet and they're watching their anime made by Japanese people and they don't complain. But the moment it's Walt Disney, then they get upset. So it's like,
well, I mean,
yeah, like telling consumers to fuck off. It was also a tactic invented by game journalists, and it bewildered people at the time. Like I still couldn't believe it. It's like, what the fuck is happening? Like how is like what is a publication? Like it needs readers, right? Why would they tell their readers to stop reading? It's just insane.
Well, I think they saw that their metrics were starting to die, and the jig was up as far as the overinflated sense of value when it comes to marketing companies. Because if you actually take a look at where a lot of these sites, you know, where they get their money from, it was ad buy-in and selling data. And both of those things only happen as if two groups of people are convinced that they're important. One, the general public, which that was on a downward spiral, and two, the marketing companies. And the marketing companies, once they stepped back and they took a look at Facebook and all these other companies, and they realized just how much of this was garbage, they started saying, you know what? No, we're not going to invest any more money or our time in your organization, or we want a big damn discount. And then as a response to that, the marketing company, the marketing company execs, they started going out and talking to their industry people, because these people are always talking with each other. They go to the same conventions. It's really incestuous as shit. So what happens is that a couple of these people did come up with the idea of anti-marketing, negative marketing, and that is driven based off of pissing off the reader.
Does it actually work?
The idea is it did at the beginning, just like Gamergate was shocking to people, but because the idea is to get hate clicks. A hate click is twofold. It's either the fan getting mad and clicking on it, and then there is the other end, which is the people who agree with you already, who are clicking at a higher rate because they don't like seeing the sites that they go to, their what do you call it? Their home turf being attacked. So they feel like that urge that we gotta turn around and defend our corporate overlords.
If you say this, wouldn't then the comment section make sense? Because you go to one of these sites and you hate click and then you write a negative thing, but then you have like the people on their home turf like replying to you. So now you're going back to reply to them, and all of a sudden you gave 2 clicks to the site. And all of these sites,
right.
If it's a financial decision, like all of them shut down their comment section.
Yes. And the reason why was because of the proven internet theory of if you go into a section that is unmoderated or relatively unmoderated,
it becomes right wing.
It becomes right wing. The problem with these companies is already they're penny pinching. They're cheap. They're basically zombies. They're venture capitalists failing. And what ends up happening is now they've got to hire competent moderator teams. Gee, that's how you get the furry bros to come in and cause like the Discord mess.
The furry bros.
You know,
I'm
like,
laughing
I mean,
because it's true. Yeah, like the furry bros are probably the most extreme left-leaning radicals that will support like any left wing. Like I think, you know, the reason I couldn't find people to debate with on the left in 2016, and I can find now, is that in 2016 there were no terms of service, right? Like you could have said anything that's legal on YouTube and it would fly. But nowadays it's like, okay, let's say I debate Vosh. Like Vosh can say the most outlandish, far-right, leftist, radical position, you know, like Reddit. It's like, oh, we need to buy Gruber because it's hate speech. You know, like he can say all of that thing and it's fine. But the moment someone like me would even say, well, you know, like Gamergate, I mean, that wasn't a hate movement, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you're defending this. Oh, well, you know, and then you can get in troubles with hate speech violation. So, yeah, like this is why all of a sudden leftists want to debate. It's because, well, they literally have the terms of service on their side. And
yes,
they didn't do back then. Like, there was no moderation.
Yeah. Well, because moderation was tricky and technology hadn't quite developed there so that you could just have a bunch of algorithmic bots or something scouring for certain types of combinations. Hence the reason why people then switched to cryptic language like the quartering, for example. You know, he doesn't say anything incendiary.
The coof.
Or incendiary.
Yeah, the coof or the trial, you know. And it's so fucking ridiculous. I mean, the technology is so good that in real time I get subtitles on my videos. And I speak with a broken accent, and the algorithm knows what I'm saying. So every time you say a word that's problematic, boom, it gets flagged. And I mean, they can monitor in real time. And the problem is, like, sometimes you can get flagged for something that's not a problem, right? But the algorithm understood a different word. Like, this is why a lot of VTubers kept getting demonetized and banned, is because their accent, you know, like, especially the Japanese VTubers, like, there's actually a funny story where a Japanese person got banned from Overwatch because he said nigero, and actually this means run in Japanese, right? Like it's a Japanese word, but the AI understood it as something else, and they banned the Japanese guy, right? And it's absolutely hilarious, but it's very difficult to create content in this environment.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem is that eventually you have to program those systems with adjacent terminology, and that's not going to work. And then you have to do voice detection, which also has a problem because certain countries or blocks like the European Union basically says, "Oi, did you get consent from them for that?" And these companies are finding themselves more and more twisted into like pretzels trying to negotiate this. And like you were saying about how there was no terms and conditions and opt-in and all the rest of that stuff. Dude, the GDDR basically was the thing that made that you have to click to accept all cookies thing universal and just about.
Oh my God, it's so fucking annoying, right? Like you go on a website and it's like, oh, you need to accept all cookies, and it's like, oh goddamn. Yeah, it annoys the living shit out of me because like I know how much Facebook harvests your data and how like, it's literally spyware at this point, especially some of these social media platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and you know, that's fine, but like you need to click I accept cookies or else like you can't read certain publications from the United States in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. They will censor it if need be. They will block you on a DNS level. I've seen that. It doesn't work once people realize that, because you can use your own private DNS server. And chat, you should look into that, because don't use your ISP's DNS. It's cancer. Don't use it. But the thing is that the European Union has advanced consumer rights, but it is also complicated tech to such a degree that terms and conditions for the most standard of vanilla sites like we used to have in the past, like forums, doing anything has become a convoluted mess. I know somebody who came to me desperately saying, my payment processor, Bob, they're going to suspend me. And I was just like, is it the content? What the hell did you do? What did you do? And in this case, the payment processor just said, you need to have a terms and conditions. And it needs to meet the new minimum requirements of the European Union, North America, Visa, and MasterCard.
Jesus Christ.
And yeah, and I asked him straight up, and I was just like, well, what payment services are you even using? And the answer was he couldn't really even tell me. And I was like, okay, well, what did they tell you to put in there? Did they give you an example? And they're like, no. So this guy is freaking out, and rightfully so, because he's been told to do a thing by a person who doesn't know what the thing even's supposed to say, but he only has 48 hours to implement it. Otherwise, they're going to be suspending his income, essentially. So
was it PayPal that he was using? Or?
No, it wasn't. He was using Stripe. I found that out after looking at it.
Yeah, like Stripe is probably one of the most censorious payment processors out there. I mean, they listen to the far left, it's almost like taking their marching orders from them.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And in this case, he was an artist, and he was doing lewd, but not safe for work. He went out, he created his own comic series, manga-ish in style. He was from Italy. And he just got hit with it out of the blue.
Yeah, a lot of lewd is being cracked down now, which is kind of weird because like you'd think the left is all about sexual liberation. I mean, that's how they got a lot of supporters initially, and now it's probably more censorious than the Catholics, to be honest. Like, if you draw a beautiful lady, an ushikushi succubus online, it's not going to be Christians that complain about it.
No, the Christians still are reeling from the lashing they got in the early 2000s. That's still left a mark. But when it comes to the payment processors and everything else, look, at this point, like the left doesn't care about lewd or not safe for work so long as it's on their terms. If you use the language they don't like to identify them, they'll come after you.
This is very interesting because under communism, it was the same in my country with comedians. Like, if you're a comedian and you made spicy jokes, it was fine as long as you pushed the message. So as long as you're, like part of the elite, not like the elite, you're pushing like the party ideology. Like, they would allow you to do that. Like, they would allow you to slip up and make like one or two jokes at the dear leader's expense. Right? Like, that was fine. Yeah. And it's very similar to lewd online, right? Like, from what you're saying, it's like so you can do lewd as long as you push the message. And I heard this from artists on Patreon that draw hentai and stuff. Like, they will get a liaison if it's a very popular artist. Like, let's say he's got more than $2,000 per month income. Like, they will get a liaison from Patreon, and they tell them where they're allowed to post their art, what they're allowed to draw, how they're allowed to interact with their fans, and if they don't do that, they risk getting their Patreon shut down.
Yes,
it's so mind-boggling. I need to have you on so we can talk about this particular thing in an entire video, because the title is Gamergate. But I mean, dude, like at this level of censorship is unthinkable from the middleman, right? Because like Patreon views this.
It is the middleman, because a lot of people were saying it's Visa and MasterCard. It's Visa and MasterCard. But the more I've looked into that, it's not Visa and MasterCard. Visa and MasterCard, really think of them as a blind giant that's walking in a direction, a straight direction. They don't know what they're stepping on. They don't know what's going on at all. They're just walking in a specific direction because they're monolithic in size. Mm-hmm. The only time that you're going to get the giant's attention is if you do something so big enough that it's actually going to be like, what was that? Visa and MasterCard, for the most part, don't do anything because they're just these big companies who don't give a crap. It's mostly on autopilot.
Yeah, they want to ban you. They have the payment processors behind them that force them to do stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the payment processors who are basically the enforcement arm of the credit card networks. You're right. You wanted to circle this back to Gamergate. We're off topic.
Yeah, let me buzz through some super chats, then I'll take a small potty break, and I'll come right back. Amakuno, thank you for the 25 Filipinas. Brand Kaminari, it's technically a racismus algorithm when you think about it, but I guess you have to pay the tax. Yeah, like if you're going to ban Japanese words, because they sound like English words and the people get in trouble. I guess like the far left would use this as like a racist algorithm. Because they also had like another thing where I believe it was like Kodak like didn't recognize black people. Like it was something to do with the AI's contrast. And the left said, oh, well, if it doesn't recognize black people, that it's racist, right? Like they didn't think about, well, the technology involved or, like anything like they didn't care. So if you're going to make that argument, then you can also make the argument that if you ban Japanese words because they sound very close to English, then it's racist. I have sent you a tower check DMs from HK9410. So there is a false article. I wanted to do a video about it, but apparently it's fake. That Twitter wants to ban N-Tower. So N-Towers is like one person, doing the letter N, and then people continuing the word. But no, it's fake. And honestly, like if they were to ban that, like if Twitter actually went after N-Towers, holy shit. Like they would get people finding inventive ways of bypassing that. They would just have to deal with a lot more shit. And right now they're understaffed. So I don't think that is going to happen. Now I'll leave you a little bit for like 1 minute and then I'll come back. You can entertain the chat while I'm gone.
Sure. All right, no problem. But I guess while V is doing his tinkle time, yeah, I saw a couple people in the chat. No, like let me circle back to Visa and MasterCard. By no way is it actually me defending them. What I'm trying to say is they're kind of blind, deaf, and dumb, walking in a direction that they don't really know what's going on around them. The problem is that yes, there is an activist wing inside of these companies, but it comes down to like their media and their marketing divisions that are actually trying to do anything. The problem is that these people are the ones who are the loudest, most obnoxious types in an organization, so they tend to get people's attention in the business, and then you'll see something happening. But in actuality, during this situation right now that we find ourselves because of the good old Bidenomics that everybody's dealing with, those people are being told largely to sit down and shut the hell up. So I know what you guys want me to do. If you want me to do that,
dude, for $1,000 super chat, I'll let you fucking do it. I mean,
oh, okay.
I'll not even delete the stream if it's like $1,000 super chat hard R. I'll be like, okay,
got it. Dude, now, did you just piss in a bottle or something, or you got the smallest bladder on the planet? Holy crap, that was fast.
No, the bathroom is really close. Are you entertained? Okay. Says Delibus. By the way, since you're into the tech world, how are companies dealing with the Bidenomics? I mean, how bad are things going to get?
Oh, dude, the companies are already starting to liquidate things left and right. There's a whole bunch of companies that were already shaky. And you want to see something that's really interesting to actually gauge how the internet's doing as far as like tech and stuff. Just keep an eye on eBay and just just search for the servers, use server. Mm-hmm. And you will see stuff that should be basically brand new that costs like 5, 10, 15 grand, and they're selling it for $1,000. You want to see how bad the situation is as far as companies starting to freak out and they're shutting down and they're scrapping things. eBay's a good place to do it because it's honest. It tells you what's actually happening in the market through liquidations of companies and everything else. And not only that, but hey, that's the other thing you should be doing, chat, is don't trust Netflix. Don't trust any of these assholes companies. Just get your own damn servers for cheap because most of these companies ain't going to survive anyway. So just grab the servers for cheap and then just set up your own privately hosted stuff out of your basement, Just do it that way. But no, they're not doing well. They're not doing well at all right now, and it's only going to get worse underneath the Bidenomics situation.
Do you think the ESG money is flowing?
Yeah.
It won't stop now that the economy is doing poorly. Like, because like for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure everyone in the chat knows about ESG, but it's an investment risk, right? So calculating risk is very subjective. Now, the way most hedge funds do it is E stands for environmental, so how, like green your company is. S for social, how well your company panders to the left ideology, and G is for governance, like how much diversity you have in your company. So if you have a high score, you get money. And what a lot of companies do is like they don't care about the consumer anymore. They just raise their ESG score by virtue signaling leftist talking points and then getting more and more money from the hedge funds. So, even with Bidenomics, the question is, are they going to be able to keep doing this?
Well, let me ask you this, and this is an honest question. This isn't a gotcha question.
Mm-hmm.
Where is most money actually created?
Like where is the money being printed, or like who has the money?
Where does most money in circulation actually come from? Is the Fed?
The Fed. Well, no, not necessarily. Like the banks can create money, and like the Fed can print money. But
bingo, you hit it. You hit it in the first guess. It's the banks, because the banks make money through credit. The problem with economic downturn and whatnot is that they see the rates go up and the volatile nature, and they don't want to be held as liable on a bunch of the defaults. So they stop lending credit. So what happens then is ESG right there goes out the window. It gets hit hard. So a lot of people right now are like, oh God, what am I supposed to do because of this economic downturn? Here's the thing, though. When you're dealing with the situation that we are dealing with activism and all levels, activism is not profitable. It really isn't. It doesn't help business. But if you are milking the system, you can go to banks, and banks will issue false credit because they're never going to really truly collect back on it, because multiple of these companies can just default on it, and the companies will just write it off as
I actually had like an argument with with another economist, and he was like, no, like banks don't create money because the credit has to be paid. And I pointed out, it's like, okay, and if people don't pay the credit and the bank defaults and the bank gets a bailout from the government, like how is that? I mean, at the end of the day, you can say, well, yeah, sure, like they don't create money, but the government just prints money because of the banks defaulting. So it's kind of, like this vicious circle. Like technically he's correct, but practically he isn't. Because we saw what happens when the banks can't pay the credits that they created, right? Like they start quote unquote printing money, which is what they do when they issue credit. People can't pay the credit back. So then the government bails out the banks, and the government prints money on behalf of the banks. Like if the banks didn't do that, the government wouldn't have printed money.
Yes, because once upon a time, the banks were actually required to hold reserves. For every dollar that they were allowed to loan, they had to have $1 in reserve. That hasn't been the case for a very long time. And instead, what actually happens is the banks get liability positions and liability insurances. So, like, I see one person in the chat right now, they're talking about the Fed. Yeah, you're right. But the Fed actually gets a whole bunch of this stuff also through limited liability positions and liability policy positions. So if you actually look into that, you've got this weird trifecta of people who are basically forever passing the buck in this weird legal money laundering situation between credit, the Fed, investors, and also insurance brokers, because they're all saying, don't worry about it, it's fine. Don't worry about it, it's fine. And that's actually what really kicked off the housing market collapse in 2007, 2008.
Also, diversity actually did it. So from what I know is like Obama said that, oh, well, there's a lot of black people who don't get credit, and it may be because of racism. So he actually had quotas. It's like, oh, yes, no, like the banks now need to give money to black people. And some of them like legitimately didn't have the possibility of paying it back. And eventually like the banks foreclosed. So, like all of these things, it's like, well, the banks aren't racist. Like they want your business and they want you to pay money. Like they don't give a shit about your skin color or sexual orientation, or none of this matters, right? If you can pay, you can pay. If not, you can't. So it's another reason why the government did the bailout, because like the banks were upset. It's like, well, you did this thing to us. Like you forced us to give houses to people that couldn't afford to pay. So now you fixed it. And that's one of the reasons for the bailouts. A lot of people were upset. It's like, oh, well, look, these banks are going bankrupt, and all of these CEOs from the banks, they're getting paychecks and they're getting pay cuts. And like, yeah, but like the problem was that the public voted for those policies. Like the American people, they voted for Obama, who then installed like these diversity policies, which at the time weren't called diversity. They had like I think it was called affirmative action or something.
Yeah, you're right. But that is just a, how do I call it? That's the bread and circus in politics to feed to those people who are willing to vote and do what they're going to do to vote to get what they want. The problem is the silent majority of people, they just want to eat, drink, and be merry. And the easiest way to contend with those people is keep the money flowing. And that's one of the reasons why people typically go to sleep. Now, when people are starting to face genuine economic hardship, they start to wake up. They start becoming more engaged in their communities. They start paying more attention. And going back to the whole GG 2.0 situation, that's the other thing too, is that the more people start paying attention because they're mad and they start trying to figure out what the hell is going on around them, they start to realize, wait a minute, this has been going on for a very long time. Where did this start? Where did this stop? And that's when people start encountering, well, even people like Sargon, because a lot of the terms that you're using, he's already seeded places like YouTube like crazy, and so is a bunch of these other people. So what ends up happening is that the very thing that these people who are anti-Gamergate, that they were worried about a revival, it's almost inevitable because there's so much content, thousands upon thousands of hours dissecting it, trying to figure out
I
what led up to
disagree.
it.
I don't think like you're going to get a Gamergate 2.0 because number one, you have terms of service now and they can shut it down really fast. And number two, you don't have like the naivete and innocence of people that thought that journalists are like Clark Kent and Lois Lane and they're just chasing a story and they're getting to the bottom of the truth. Like now, most people know that the tactics journalists do are corrupt. They expect this whole marketing campaign of hate clicks and insulting your target audience. I think you would need something new, like for example the farmers protest, but they managed to shut down really fast, right? Like
one second. See, here's the thing, that's a metric, right? You got to define what do you consider like the first time a thing happened, the first Gamergate. Okay. We saw, we could clearly see it because it created a shock, right? Yeah. It created a big wave, a ripple, right?
Yeah, like 4chan and Tumblr people working together, like that fucked people up really hard. Like, I remember it's like people on 4chan were like, "Oh, well, why are you working with the ones on Tumblr?" And it's like, well, because like they put aside their differences pretty much. It's like because it's effective.
Yeah, exactly. But now fast forward to today. We are living in an era where the ripples aren't noticed as much because people are constantly throwing the metaphoric rock into a small pond constantly. But there's another demographic of people that is largely forgotten, and that is the silent majority. Most of these people are waking up and they're taking sides now. They're deciding, do I want to go more to the left? Do I want to go more to the right? So what ends up happening is that what I'm saying is that people are starting to discover some of these older things through the new platforms, because what's happening is there's a lot of channels who archive, they pick up on the old things, Mr. Medicare stuff like that. Like there was a lot of people who archived that stuff, and now with the emergence of all these new video platforms, they're reposting them. They're reposting them over there, and normies are stumbling across this because of, well, the censors have got too much ground to cover now. It's not limited to just a site like YouTube. It's chunks of the internet, chunks of the surface web, if you will. So what I'm saying is that I think there is a possibility for a second Gamergate, and we may be beginning to see the beginnings of it. And the reason why I think that's the case is not you, I, or anybody else who's in chat. What I think it is it's people who are new, they've not seen this before, and they're like, why the hell are all these people such assholes 24/7? Why are they telling me that I can't raise my damn kid the way I want them to?
Yeah. Like actually, you do have a point. Eat? Yeah, like you do have a point. I guess like Gamergate 2.0 would be the critical race theory in schools and the drag kids in schools. Like this is actually a big controversy that is probably happening with the older generation, like the parents, and you know, a lot of people online aren't privy to that. I mean, like people in the chat, you know, like we're not exposed to that. And it's probably because they're not funny and edgy and they don't really understand how to raise clout on the internet. But
Yes.
they are very effective. Like from what I could tell from other people that I have in the United States, they have managed to overthrow school boards. They have managed to vote like some of the most radical conservatives in, like the Christian mom that's like has her hand on the Bible and Jesus is at the wheel. Like that is massive when it comes to changing culture, because all of those school boards are going to be able to install new policy, and it's
Yes.
going to be very anti-left. Like a lot of the bullshit
Yes.
that the left took for granted is going to be completely removed from the school boards. And
Yeah, it's going to be that, but the people forget that the pendulum effect is a real thing. The pendulum is a way of just saying like you're putting all this energy into something, you know, and that pendulum is just getting higher and higher and higher, and the problem is that once it builds up enough energy, and something happens, it's going to come swinging back down, and everybody is going to be like, what's that going to look like when the swing starts? What's going to happen when it hits the bottom of that swing? And the thing is that for a while now, that pendulum has actually started to swing back. The parents were a really big thing.
yeah,
Because
I think like
of CRT.
COVID actually brought upon this, because for the first time ever, parents could actually see what their kids were studying at school. Like you had these online seminars, and the parents weren't able to go to work anyway because like their businesses were shut down. So they managed to hear like all of this shit about white privilege, and like all of the stuff that their kids were being exposed to. And when they
Yeah.
started getting concerned and they were talking with the parents, like they were labeled as domestic terrorists. So
Yes.
and intimidation tactics, and all of the other nonsense, and the teachers being higher than mighty and doing their best in order to be disliked. For example, not wanting to go back to school until like they could be sure that not a single kid has COVID. And people were pointing out, it's like, okay, but you still get paid. Like I don't get to go to my work because the government doesn't allow me, and I don't get paid. And you, as a teacher who's a public servant, like you can choose to stay at home and you can still get money. And there were teachers, like the head of a teachers union, like she was very worried about her health. It's like, oh, I'm never going back to work until like they can prove that not a single person is infected. And meanwhile, she was taking vacations in Hawaii on the beach during the pandemic, right? Like she wasn't afraid then. And the parents noticed this, and they were absolutely disgusted, and it fueled the movement. It pushed them even harder.
Yeah, exactly. And not moving away from it, but just to answer chat. Um, Look, the pendulum effect is just an example. All right, it's the idea of putting a bunch of energy into something and it's going to come back. Too many people like Vosh and all these other guys, they like to be autistic in nature about it, saying, "Oh, when the pendulum swings back to the right, then you're going to see all these other things undone." I'm like, no. What I'm talking about is how quickly things start to happen and why they happen, and that is that they happen with less and less structure and reason. It's because what's happening is that once you wear a person down to the point where they're just like, you know what, I'm going to break this down into something very simple. You're going to get off my lawn, or you're going to find out what physics are like from the barrel of my shotgun. Right? You're basically taking polite society and you're stripping it away. So the situation that I'm trying to say here is, look, what one of the things that you got to be careful about with the pendulum effect is not so much the one political side or the other political side. It's who's stoking the fires, who's pissing somebody off the most, right? And when it comes to situations like what V and I are discussing here, people get lost in the tism of of the macro and not the major. What I'm trying to say here from my perspective and what I've seen in my particular field and what V is seeing in his particular field. V, if I'm wrong, please
Mm-hmm.
speak for yourself. I don't want to speak for you, but the situation is this: the Gamergate ripped open the curtain and we saw behind the scenes for what it actually was, especially in an industry that was becoming less and less relevant with every bit of technological change and the cost of production going down quicker and quicker and quicker. Again, Sargon, right? Sargon is now basically creating his own little network, his own little internet news network and media outlet. He couldn't have done that a couple of years ago because there was just no way that he would have the infrastructure necessary to do it. And I would argue, even if you want to be really autistic, he still doesn't, because he's using other people's crap. He doesn't own any of it. But the point that I'm trying to say is that there is the beginning of something that never really ended. Now you've got more and more people who are being pulled into it because you've got these people who are reminiscing of the past for one reason or another. They're either pissed off on the left and the journals, as they re into oblivion, and then you've got the people on the right who are mad because it's just like, look, all I wanted was to be left alone to play video games. You're going to do this. You're going to make me be politically active. Okay, then I'm going to be activated.
Well, the interesting thing is that the left tied itself to the concept that unless you give puberty blockers to children, you're not a leftist. You know, like, unless you're in favor of that. Like, they literally made it to the point where if you disagree with that statement, then you're not a progressive, right? And a lot of people are going to go, it's like, oh, well, I don't want that for my kid. And they're going to be attacked by leftists. And the only people that are willing to listen to them are going to be right-wingers.
Yes.
And that is
the
like...
enemy and my enemy.
Yeah, but like, it's such a bizarre thing, right? Because, like, everything that's leftist politics, like public healthcare and, you know, equity and, like, whatever nonsense they were spewing, like, all of that, like, you can't be for that unless you're also for this other fringe thing that is not popular at all. I mean, the only reason, like, the pronouns in the bio stuff, you know, outside of social media, I don't know how popular it actually is. I don't know if you go into a rural area and you're like, well, respect the pronouns bigot. Like, how many people are going to laugh at you versus how many are going to take you seriously? So, like, they're holding these fringe positions that do not resonate with the public. And they're making it, it's like, unless you're with this, then you can't be a leftist. So a lot of people are just going to stop voting, or they're going to be like, well, the only people listening to me are right-wingers. And that's how the pendulum starts swinging. That's really, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, like, oh, well, Gamergate and other online things like the Amber Heard trial, like, yeah, those are cute. But when do you, like, tell a person about how they should raise their children, and you're telling them that, a teacher is more important than a parent? That's literally what they're teaching, right? Like, they're saying that the teacher is the second parent, and, you know, they're the only ones that are expert enough and wise enough to educate children, and the parents shouldn't mingle. I don't think, like, a lot of people are going to go with that.
They're not. But the other thing, too, is that a lot of people didn't realize that the people who are disenfranchised at the voting box are the ones that are looking at it on the major, so entire national elections. The thing that the left has a big blind spot for is the local game, and that's what they realized. Oh, it's too late, because these parents started to take over the school boards, and then local politicians in those and state houses in the U.S. and that's the problem. Is that the left is all about centralization and the centralization of power, and that's one of the reasons why they can be undermined so easily with local elections if you get the normies activated.
Yeah, if you do grassroots, like genuine grassroots, they have actual problems dealing with those. And what's interesting, like, there was a bank in the UK which is now the worst scandal in British financing. Like, this bank placed a picture of her pronouns, and it's like, oh, well, you know, like, being part of this bank is because, you know, it's important because we value people's identity and blah blah blah. Now, that's not a problem in itself, but the problem was that people who were mocking it on Twitter, the bank literally told them, like, if you don't like this, take your business elsewhere. And apparently when you promote that, like, people actually follow through, and there was so much money moving on. And I think, like, the reason for this is because now people associate every bad leftist policy with the pronouns. Like, inflation. Well, it's the pronouns people doing it, you know? Like, like, the vice president of the U.S. has pronouns in her bio, right? Like, it's so tied to like leftist ideology, to the point where every time, like, left-leaning politicians are going to make a bad policy, like, people will automatically, like, think of that.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, you want to see something that's even funnier? Well,
Mm.
I know most people don't look at this, but it's interesting from the business point of view. I see more and more people trying to do pronouns in the bio on places like LinkedIn. And I also see people recently, now as we're getting closer to the midterms, people are taking them down.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
big.
there is a backswing where people are just like, I don't want to be identified as X anymore, because more and more businesses are now starting to say, hey, you know what? I'm here just to sell something. Why don't you keep that in your pants?
Yeah, I mean, there's two reasons for it. So the first reason is that businesses, as you mentioned, like they notice what happens at Netflix, they notice what happens at Twitter. It's like the moment like a business makes a sound financial decision, like okay, let's have Dave Chappelle on. They have to deal with walkouts, they have to deal with whiny babies, and all of them, are part of the same ideology. And businesses are like, well, why the fuck do I need to deal with that? Like when you go and you interview a guy, and the guy would be like, "So what do you bring for the company?" Well, not much, but I'll tell you what. Like I'm going to start unionizing, and I'm going to decide what your company policy is and who are you allowed to sell the stuff and for how much. Like who would hire such a person, right? And secondly, it's like the pronouns in the bio thing is not even about trans people. It's more about a signifier that you're part of this, radical fringe ideology. It's kind of like Christians using crucifixes. Is to
Yep.
signal to one another that yeah, you're part of this like ideology, and it comes with a package,
Hmm.
like a way of thought and whatnot. Like imagine hiring Christians at a porn company, right? Like maybe, but like if they're really devout and pious, and then they start going, it's like, oh well, like we don't like this because like if you keep doing it, we're going to walk out, and they're just there to subvert your company. Then why would you do that? Like why it's not a good business decision.
Well, that's just it. Is once you start to figure out who's going to be subversive from within, you get
Mm-hmm.
rid of them, or you literally give them no work until their position becomes irrelevant. And then, dude, I mean, like,
Do you know the
there's
Japanese do
so
that
many
shit?
ways that you.
Like they
Oh, they
they
do
will.
that.
So
They do
fighting
that.
people in Japan is next to impossible. So what Japanese
Yep.
companies do is they would put you in a room where you have to show up on time, and you're not allowed to do anything, right? Like you just have to be in that room, and eventually people quit because they can't handle it. It's like it's too much stress. Like you feel worthless. You feel like like in Japan, it's very important to have like this mentality that you're contributing to society. So when your company just puts you in a room with a table and nothing else, and you have to sit there for 8 hours, like most people don't last even a week.
Yep. Yeah. It's basically getting to the cooler.
The
Yeah.
cooler.
It's it's there's all sorts of clever ways of dealing with it. In my situation, I basically have talked in the past with like RGE about the HR
Raging Golden
problem,
Eagle, yeah.
just to give. Yeah. And the one thing that I said to him is that what we're doing is we're walking into an era where the gig economy is a real thing, which is also not a bad problem if you're smart. So subcontractors, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, "Oh, subcontractor." They think some dirty guy in overall. No, what it is what you're doing is you just do that. You just don't actually hire full time employees for certain roles, and that enforces meritocracy because everybody has to justify their invoicing.
Oh yeah, and like if you
Um,
do that with the HR department, they don't start empire building in your company.
Bingo. And not only that, but HR can also be contracted out, and they can also be put on limited contracts. So if I were ever in a situation, which I wouldn't find myself in because I'm not that retarded, but I would, like, if I were to go to a region where they mandate you have to have HR,
Like California,
um, yeah, like California, yeah. What I would
yeah.
do is I would actually use a subcontracted service, HR service, and I would make sure that it's on a 6 month rotation,
Mhm.
so that nobody can ever really do any type of empire building by organization or individual. So what ends up happening is that these people have to still resort on meritocracy, otherwise they know they're going to be replaced, and there's nothing that the law can do about that. And that's the beginning of how you solve for this issue. And then the next thing is economic. And you know what? Again, it's weird. I don't want to. I'm not going like yeah recession yeah. But the other part of me is just like good. This will flush a lot of these idiots down the toilet, and they're going to have to reassess what the hell it is that they're going to do for a living if they want to put activism first before work.
Yeah, like for a lot of you who
And
don't know what the way so many companies got subverted, like Gillette started pushing out, messages rather than razors. Maybe, like they
yeah,
can go one with another, the messaging and the razor. But the reason is the HR. Right? Like I remember reading about there was this diversity hire from DC that got fired, and she was, spilling the beans because she was like very vindictive because she got fired, and she was bragging
yep,
how she got most of the talent at her workplace fired. She was explaining how she was digging tweets and like trying to get her boss fired because she didn't like him and stuff like that. And before that, she worked at another company. I think it was called Lionsgate. And she couldn't do that because she didn't have an HR. So she was like really livid. It's like, oh, wow, you guys don't have an HR? Like, blah, blah, blah. The HR is how they subverted companies. Because the HR does the hiring, the firing, and the promotion. And what ends up happening is that they don't hire for the interest of the company. They were hiring for the ideological interests, right? So you now have like people that are really bad at their job, but they have the good ideology and they get promoted. And you have people that are really talented artists and really good writers, and they wouldn't get hired, or they would get put on leave, or like their life made miserable because the mediocre artist had their fifis hurt. Because that was another thing, right? Like that's literally why she went after a guy. Like the guy was very talented. Like he was at the company for a couple of decades. And he pointed out that her drawing is subpar, probably wanted to give her a couple of hints. And he's like, oh my God, he was mansplaining to me. And he's like, I know what I'm doing. And, like she went to HR and got him in trouble. And eventually the guy fucked off.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, the other thing too is that what I like to say to people, to get them to understand how corporate culture works, is that everybody's got a clock. It's just that most people's clock hasn't started, and that clock is counting down. Mm-hmm. When you're dealing with a company that is HR heavy, HR driven, that clock is about to start at any moment, and everybody knows it. And that's one of the reasons why you will go into certain places, and the employees there are they're miserable.
Honestly, I was talking about it. Like, can you imagine how it's like working at Blizzard now? Because I happen to know a couple of connections, and you do as well. But like, they were talking about how they're afraid to speak, just like use words, because anything they can say can be interpreted in a negative way. So like you have someone coming with a bad game design project, and it's like, oh, what do you think? And it's like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, it's great, it's awesome, And it's like, is this corporate culture that they're fostering? It's one of fear, one of terror. It's pretty much how my parents lived under. I keep making like these references, it's like how it was for my parents under communism, but like they're so fucking accurate, because everything you said like could have been used against you and get you into trouble, and it's pretty much how it's like working at these corporations. Like any joke that you make, any tweet that you put out, like the staff is working in legitimate fear. And that's why they can't create anymore. That's why they're so morally bankrupt, because like no one has the courage to come up with an original concept.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the other thing that they are the political enforcement of corporate culture. They are the Politburo trying to go out there and enforce all this crap.
Yeah, the apparatchiks.
Yeah. Because I mean, they don't. It's really weird. Like, have you ever seen that movie, Hunt for Red October? You ever seen that movie?
the one where I believe it was North Korea invades the United States, or Russia, depending on which version you're watching.
No. This is a 90s thing about a Russian submarine that goes rogue and everybody tries to defect.
Okay. Yeah. Like they were given an order to nuke something, and then they lost radio contact. Is that
no, that's a different one. I'll just get to the point,
okay.
So you don't have to worry about it. But basically, one of the things is in the opening scene of that movie, they have this guy who's sitting down across from the captain, which is Sean Connery, and this guy is going toe to toe with the captain. He is basically the sub, the final authority on a massive ballistic missile sub for the Soviet Union. They have the ability to destroy all their enemies. with one push of a button, right? Just this one sub because it's so massive, right? And this guy who's sitting across here arguing with him is just the political officer. And think about that for a minute, right? The political officer is arguing with the leader.
Yeah, that was normal in the Red Army.
Powerful commands.
Yeah, in the Red Army, but you had the officer and the commissar.
Yep.
And they would
exactly.
often go toe to toe, and they would argue about stuff. Yeah, that's
but that is actually what the HR does inside of corporations. They will go there and they will sit across from a CEO who actually owns the company, and they will sit there and be like, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to go this route?
I remember investors? At Netflix, like I was shocked, when I was like, I couldn't believe what I was reading, right? Because you know that this is happening, but when you actually read about it, it's shocking. So after they had Dave Chappelle, like you have this HR lady bursting into the room where the CEO was having a meeting and throwing a hissy fit, right? And she got placed, I believe, on paid leave for like 2 weeks or so. And she was saying, oh my fucking God, like Netflix is transphobic. Because like she was trans. It's like, oh, well, that's why they kicked me out. And I'm like, no, they kicked you out because you bursted into a meeting while the CEO was talking. Like, what the fuck? Like, who gets to do that at their job and still like get suspended with paid leave? Like, what other person has the ability to do that shit? Like, you have the biggest privilege, if anything. Like, I don't think like anyone from my chat can even comprehend, having your boss in a meeting at a big corporation. Like, we're not talking about, mom and pop shop. No, we're talking about Netflix, and just barge into the director's office while they're talking with other people. Like, it's insane. Yeah, she was given a vacation, literally, right? And this is the power of HR people at the company. And the reason they have this power is because they can literally just rile up the employees. They can do all sorts of protests. It's so difficult to get rid of them. Although
it gets even worse than that. I know another dirty trick about HR that most people don't know about, except for the executives. Who is HR also responsible for vetting in a company?
I mean, they vet probably everyone, right? Like, except the
everyone,
board?
Including contractors. But who's the one thing that all big companies can't do without? And it's really dirty if you think about it.
The legal system?
Bingo. They're the ones who are the ones who issue the final approval as to what law firm to go with. So at the end of the day, if the person from that law firm is only talking to the HR person, and the paycheck and the checks and the invoices are being authorized from accounting, which is also adjacent to the HR, where's the actual power structure and dynamic in most of these companies?
Yeah, I kept saying this. Yeah, like when the left says it's like men have all the power, I'm like, well, define power. Like, do you think just having a CEO, like that's the power of the company, the CEO? Like, I would go with the HR lady all the time. Like, they're the ones that do the hiring. They're the ones that can get the CEO fired. Like, who do you think can come up with these Me Too shit? And it's like, oh, yes, well, the CEO was in this room and he happened to be with this other woman and where he said inappropriate things to her. Yep. I mean, the HR exactly. can literally get, like, people that they hire to say, yeah, like, you need to stick with this story so you can get the boss fired. I mean,
exactly.
It has happened so many times. And I'm really curious if it's going to be fixed. Like, I know how a company did it. Like, they put all of the ESG people, like the diversity officers and all of that. Like, they put them in a department. I don't know what they called it. I don't know, like, if they actually called it the ESG department. But they basically, like, put them all in a department, and they started downsizing the department because they were like, oh, well, we're suffering, from the recession, so we need to do a little bit of pay cuts and blah, blah, blah. And they started downsizing the HR people, the ESG department.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the reason why I think a lot of these people are perpetually screeching even louder now, is that they fear recessions because a lot of these companies, a lot of these CEOs, they're not happy because they've been held hostage by the powers that be. And now they're just like, now I have the perfect way of getting rid of all you people, and nobody's going to be able to say anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is that, you know, that's one of the things that I would actually do first is I would actually have a separate parallel conversation with the legal team, and I would be like, look, we're going to be unfortunately having to let a bunch of people go, and we need to make sure that these letters that we're sending out are properly drafted legally. And then you slip them a list and you put the HR person who's the most troublesome at the top, so it sends a message back to the legal team that your little buddy there is going first.
Yeah.
So it's
I
a nice
remember.
little...
Do you remember that video with the HR lady? It's like, watch what you say on social media. You remember that?
I remember her.
And
the Karen cackle.
And I was saying, it's like, she is so going to get fired because I was counting on the fact that such a person must have her boss just waiting for an excuse. Like just
they're not
just
like
waiting for a fucking reason.
Everybody hates these people, V. They really do. HR people, they get in as the golden boy. So they come in here and they just make things happen. And everyone's on management's like, wow, this is so much easier because this person has this connection, just understands how this works, or they can fill out these forms just perfectly. And then they realize, oh God, there's a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, there's a cost.
There's a big cost, yeah. This is when I was a guild master. You know, it's not really a good comparison, but like still, you have like something. You get people together, and you need to get them in a functioning group. And I realized like when you get the guy with the networking, and like he knows the guy that he knows the guy, and they bring him into the guild, and then you have like 4 or 5 people in the guild, and they're really competent at what they're doing, but then they start making conditions. And they're like, either you do our way or all 5 of us are going to leave. So, you know, you start relying on them. And then even though you're the guild master, you still have to do what they say. Because if you don't, then they end up leaving. And it's very, very difficult to actually work around this situation. Right? Like, you need to start inviting more people in the guild. You need to start doing rotations to slowly trickle them out. And it's so fucking difficult. But now that's a World of Warcraft guild. Now, if you talk about a corporation where money is involved, like I can't imagine the nightmare that you have to go through to get rid of these people.
It is a nightmare, and I do actually say to some of these people, you got my sympathy, but at the end of the day, if you really want to get rid of them, there's ways of doing it. You're just going to have to realize you created this mess, and now you're going to have to fight your way out of it. And many people are really surprised. I said this actually to a CEO, which was one of my former clients, and I like the guy didn't believe me when I said this to him, and this is funny. The expression on his face is still perfect. I love it. I said to him, "You do understand a boss could be fired," and he's just like, "I own the company. You can't fire me." And I'm like, "No, you get fired when the bulk of your good employees leave you.
That is correct.
Now your company is doomed."
Yeah, it's like a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Because, you know, like with Dungeons and Dragons, you have the guild master, and, you know, he gets to do whatever he wants. But the moment the players leave, well, the jig is up.
Yeah, exactly. And the trick now, with all the stuff that's going on, if I were any of these guys, if any of these idiots, these people who are just going along the get along types, realize that it's time to purge this crap, the easiest thing is to clean up HR first. You bring in some consulting HR firms, the ones that are just people who have to really exist in the reality of the world. And that's the reason why I think subcontractors are better, quite honestly, because they realize that they're only as good as their last screw up, because their last screw up is going to be spread amongst a roster of other clients, because people do talk. The world is much smaller than you realize.
So the cackling HR lady does have a point. It's like people do talk.
Well, she's right, but she doesn't understand that that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Now that she's been fired, good luck in finding more work, because now people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, this psycho, remember her?" Laughing at her, you know, because I like you would never hire her. I sure shit wouldn't hire her. But the thing is that there are regulations that have been created in government that says you need to have somebody who's overseeing X in a business, but they don't actually say that they have to be full-time employees. The thing is that even states in the U.S. that are doing this, that mandate that, whenever there is a situation where there's an economic downturn, turmoil, people fleeing the state, you're seeing tax revenue leaving like crazy, people will vote with their wallets or they'll vote by relocation. And these companies are already doing it. You're seeing a shit ton of them leaving California. They're going to Texas. They're going to Florida. And these states are just saying, hey, we don't know about all those things about your corporate culture. We don't really care. What we're interested in is you pay your taxes, you do what you're supposed to do as corporate citizens, and you shut the fuck up. It's as simple as that. When you're dealing with the nanny state types, the people who love central authority like California, California only works if there's a steady influx of people, and that's not happening. It keeps receding. So, at a certain point, when you're dealing with the crap that's going on as a result of economic downturns, look, a lot of people, especially economists, they will look at an economic downturn and they like to say something that's safe, and that is, you know what? This is just an economic correction. This is just a course correction for the economy. But what they really want to say, then they can't say because they're worried of the HR ladies of the world, is no, this is going to weed out all the dumb fucks that keep causing us these problems. Because these people, the only way that you can convince the rest of the world that you shouldn't listen to them and they're a bunch of idiots is if they go tits up. They need to go away.
That is correct. And I hope we're seeing that happening right now, especially with the Biden economics. But anyway, right, I need to end it here because I do have videos to make on my main channel. It was really great having you. Like, hopefully we can do this again because I really find it insightful, especially when you talk about the corporate culture. And
no problem, man.
Yeah, like, thank you, chat, for being here, and guess I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.